Get Out. It's a map series of mine. It has existed since January 22nd of 2018. This series really shows how much I progressed in map making in almost 2.5 years. When I made Get Out 1, I never thought there would be at least 3 more maps in the same style by me. And now, the second to last Get Out map is done. I am going to show you the 5 steps I used to make this map. So without any further ado, let's jump in. There were 5 steps into making this map. The first is writing out my idea. The second step is to build the map. The third step is to code and make the map actually work. The fourth step is to test the map with as many people as possible. The fifth and final step is to make the trailer for the map and publish it on the internet. I began with creating a document where I can write my ideas such as the plot, different endings and more. I was doing it while my brother and sister were watching some anime, so I was a bit distracted. My idea at first was to let you and Super Fleur and L be stuck in a black and a white room. It was supposed to be a normal Get Out map without any generated structures, but instead of there being one box, there would be multiple. I ended out with generated structures, but there were still differences between this idea and the eventual map. One example is an idea I had for the chess ending. The mansion ending wasn't time-based like now. You had to put the chess pieces in the right order. When I finished all endings, I realized that the chess ending didn't match the rest of the endings. I decided to change it later on. The other endings I was keeping. After writing, it was time to get into Minecraft and begin building. I started out with building a part of the maps of Get Outs 2 and 3 because my idea was to code in a recap. I had never done this before, but I wanted to give it a try. I searched for pictures of the map, so I actually didn't have to download the maps themselves, but I had to do it eventually. After creating these boxes, I created the structures. First off, the Woodland Mansion. The second room actually didn't exist until after the first couple of tests, so that is why it can be seen right now. I also built in the chest pattern on the floor just in case I could not think of an alternate ending. Then I built a shipwreck. I wasn't focusing on the surroundings yet. I knew it was a long process, so I did not build a cave around the shipwreck. Building a shipwreck took longer than I thought. At first, I didn't know how to build the structure. Thankfully, I found a blueprint on the Minecraft wiki by Gregatron6000. Thanks to them, I could go on and build a shipwreck. After finishing the shipwreck, I decided that an igloo would be a nice choice. This was a different kind of challenge because I wanted more igloo basement rooms. I came up with a total of 3 rooms, each with different things inside. The first room was supposed to be a normal basement room. Aside from the cages being turned and mirrored and the table being mirrored, most of the basement seems recognizable to me. I placed the lava for the structure and I made a second room. I had to run my imagination now because there was little left for me to build in the rest of the basement. I ended up with a lectern with the arrows from the signs and a dead bush. The third room had a cauldron in it and more cages. My idea was to put in some mobs inside those cages, but I forgot and was too lazy to put them in again. After that, I built the top part of the igloo. Making the dungeon wasn't very hard, but I placed some placeholders in instead of spawners. The top of the dungeon was supposed to look like the top of the arena on my mob battle map because I wanted people to select a kit. This was later removed. The next thing I wanted to build was the Nether Fortress. I didn't want a Nether portal in my world for multiple reasons. I took one of the biggest challenges on that world so far, making the Nether inside the overworld. And it took so long, for me anyways. After an hour and a half, I finished the big cave the Nether Fortress was in. It was finally time to build the fortress itself. I have no footage of that, but it took me a long time. I tried to create some sort of maze, but it did not end up that way. A big part of the maze didn't exist at that point. I used the structure blueprint from Andrew AB to build the Nether Fortress, but there were still 4 things I had to make. Zupian and El's throne room, his fighting area, the starting room and the cave the shipwreck was in. I am so done with this. I'm going outside. I'll go outside, take a walk, and then I might return doing this. I also made a basement before you went into the throne room. After that, I made a long hallway, the throne room itself. I didn't know what the best option was for the wall, so I asked my Discord server members. It wasn't very effective, no one voted. There were like 3 members in total. I chose cobblestone after a few days. The pillars were made out of polished diorite, which looked better than I thought. I was just getting started with the fighting area when I realized it might be more epic if the fighting area was the throne room. So I stopped working on it. I connected all structures and I started on the shipwreck cave. The outline alone took me 2 hours, but the real frustration began after building it. I needed to fill the area with water. I tried placing it down manually, I tried using the fill command, but water is stupid! After 4 hours of filling, deleting and much more, I gave up and left most of the water around the cave alone. I placed some sand, kelp, seagrass and coral and I was finally done with— Actually no! I had to clean up all the water inside the shipwreck, which took me another half hour because I forgot the existence of sponges. Finally, I could build a starting area and it was time to code. Coding. This was the most fun part of the entire process.
Well, apparently I suck at coding.
With coding, you essentially build up everything. I've gotten to know the /execute command over the past year. When I started coding on Get Out 4, I had 11 months of experience with the command. I also used datapacks for like 5 months, but that was and is not my strongest part. I ended up using functions instead of command blocks, which was a good choice because I used 1648 commands? Wow, that's a lot! Anyways, it was a good choice to use the functions because their impact on performance is minimal, and because I found out later that command blocks aren't needed at all to run functions, it's even better! What you're about to see is the very first recap I've ever made. It's only the beginning part, but it does show how I worked with functions and commands. I actually began with the starting area before working on the recap. It didn't take long, but I want to mention it. Making the recap was one of the greatest things I've ever accomplished in my Minecraft days. I used the /TP command to teleport every player to a specific place, facing a specific place or entity. I used my recreations of the other 2 Get Out maps. I frequently tested if everything worked, and it was amazing to see the results. The recap was done and I could start off another great thing I've accomplished in my Minecraft days. I made an NPC that will follow you and fight mobs. I had some ideas for it. The first part was the hardest part, making it so that Subfluenel will look at the player or mob. I don't know why it was that difficult, but it took me 40 minutes to get some progress. Anyway, after a little while, Subfluenel worked perfectly. Well, there were a few bugs, like the fact that she could clip through blocks and fly. I fixed that for the most part. Subfluenel had some minor bugs, but it was nothing to worry about. I began working on the mansion. I had no idea what to do at the time, so I just improvised. I removed the chest pattern floor and replaced it with birch planks. I gave the player full iron and an iron sword. I don't exactly know what I did, because I didn't record, but I ended up finding out that command blocks were not needed for running functions. This ending did not change much after finishing the initial coding. While working on the shipwreck ending, I realized that every single function stopped working. It was because of one single misspelled word. I found the error and was able to fix it pretty soon after. When I fail at one single command, every function that isn't run by command blocks will stop working until I fix the problem. Boss battle.
It's not boss battle, is it fortress?
It's fortress. I gave myself an overpowered diamond chestplate for in one of the chests. I also cheated in an overpowered bow and a stack of arrow. There were no problems while making the igloo ending, because it was mostly parkour without functions. But the trouble began with the dungeon ending. While making the dungeon ending, I wasn't aware of the problems that were forming around me. Apparently, mobs would not spawn even at night. I didn't realize this, of course, so I left it there. I also abandoned the idea of kit selection because I think it wasn't really the style. That left me with a massive open space above the dungeon. I didn't know what to implement in that. Making the fortress ending wasn't difficult. It was a maze, so it didn't require much coding. The last thing I needed to code in was the boss fight. I wanted the boss fight with the following things. It had to be hard, there had to be special attacks, and it had to have dialogue. It took me a while. I made it so that Subfluenel gave the player a speech about how he didn't think the player could make it. After some dialogue, the fight could begin. I made a chain of command blocks to convert the throne room back to its original state. But wait, there's more. The Subfluenel boss fight was a lot different from the original boss fight. At first, the special attacks were not random, they were written out in the original boss fight file. First, there was a shockwave, after that there would be a poison attack. The ceiling falls after that and another shockwave at the end. The boss would also teleport to his throne when a new special attack started. I was so hyped when my brother tested it. And did you know what he said?
That was the most relaxed boss fight I've ever played.